Let's talk for a few minutes about different logic books and different logicians using different symbols for the same concepts. Can we do that?
It happens all the time.
Yeah, we're at Twin Ponds Park in Shoreline, Washington, and we're doing a video that's probably, we're late in the game, we're middle of May, but this will probably be factoring back into work we were doing in October. In some logic books, in many logic books, the ampersand is used for the conjunction operator, which is typically expressed with the word and. When we join two sentences together with the word and between them, we form a conjunction. And many logic books use the ampersand to represent and. Okay? But many logic books also use a different symbol.
Some will use a dot.
A lot of times you see a dot instead of the ampersand to represent conjunction. And so this symbol is the ampersand. This symbol is called dot. Its name is dot.
I've also seen caret.
Have you?
Oh yeah. Rarely, yeah. But I sometimes see that. And this means the same thing as and.
So instead of writing A ampersand B to represent the conjunction of A and B, such as Ann is home and Bob is home, some text you'll see it written A dot B, and that just says Ann is home and Bob is home. And then in some books you'll see the caret, A caret B, saying that Ann is home and Bob is home. So these three symbols are probably the most often used.
It's really easy to get used to one. You may have a teacher who's using this, you may see our text using that, you may run across a book did you check out of the library that uses that? It's not that tough to kind of bounce back and forth in your mind.
Yeah, you can translate it in your mind. When I first started teaching, the textbooks I used all used the dot. And then when I wrote my first textbook in logic, I used the dot. And then one of my former logic teachers gave me a pretty good argument for using ampersand. He argued, well, ampersand is on your computer key, on your typewriter keyboard, and it also means and already, and it's big, it's not easy to miss, whereas dot, some people confuse it with multiplication. It's hard to type, it doesn't have a standard meaning of and, so some people, for some of those reasons, favor ampersand, some favor the dot.
And since more and more logic classes are going online and people are having to type in their answers and send them online, the ampersand is just easier for people who are at home working completely from the keyboard. But they're all as good as the other.
They're all good. They're all good.
The horseshoe sometimes is seen in other ways.
Okay, so a lot of textbooks will symbolize a conditional if A then B using this symbol, the horseshoe.
That's the most common.
Probably most common.
I have occasionally seen an arrow going this direction. I'm not real happy with that.
Some textbooks use the arrow for the if-then connection that's represented by horseshoe normally. What would you say? 90% of all textbooks use horseshoe?
At least.
60, 70, 80, 90. Some textbooks use arrow.
But, like we're going to do modal logic sometime this quarter, and with modal logic you'll need the arrow. So I kind of like using the horseshoe for this because that arrow does get used elsewhere later on in a class. But you get used to it. You just got to figure out what the book's doing and go with it.
Yeah. If you may be using a text that uses the arrow for if then for what we call the horseshoe. That's fine. If books that use the arrow, if a book uses the horseshoe, then for the if and only if, they'll typically use the triple bar.
Right.
So the triple bar means if and only if, A if and only if B. And if a book uses the arrow for if then, if A then B, what would they use for triple bar?
I usually see a double arrow where it's going back and forth.
Then you'll see them using a double arrow for if and only if. So if this means if A then B, this would mean A if and only if B. Those are some of the common interchanges.
Tildes are sometimes a little different?
Yes. Okay, so normally a book will use the little tilde symbol. For the negation operator, it's not the case that's what most books use.
Most. Rarely I've seen just what looks like a minus sign.
Yeah. Some books use a thing that looks like this.
That too.
For negation of A.
logic books that are working with computer science oftentimes will do that.
Yes, and Bonnevec uses this in his book.
I've also just seen just that sometimes.
Uh-huh.
And fortunately, both these are in a keyboard.
Yeah.
This is your top left, so this is clearly the most common one in Logic.
The problem I would have with the minus sign is that people normally associate it with minus in arithmetic. And it's important to remember that the negation operator in logic does not have the same meaning as the minus sign in math.
Now, the wedge in the OR statements, I've only seen wedges. Are you familiar?
I've never seen another symbol for wedge.
Okay, so wedges seem to be nearly universal, if not universal, for the OR statement.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you translate in your mind, if you use a book that doesn't use this, translate this for this. It's pretty easy after a few minutes. Okay, thank you.